Here to introduce you today to Mindset Mike Moore. Fun fact about Mike, he actually left a job for 7 years in the FBI to go and pursue wrestling mindset full time. So I think that shows his dedication, his drive to help the wrestling community, to help other sports. So we'll talk about kind of branching out. And we got to chat a little bit last night. And just in about an hour, I had my mind blown several times. So I think we're in for a special treat. And without further ado, Mike.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I always feel like I'm about to do a stand-up show when I'm up here. So real quick, I know we just ate. I've been in your shoes many times. So just do me a favor and just give me your full attention for about the 50 minutes that we're here. I promise you that I'm loud and have a lot of energy. So I think the fact that we just came from lunch shouldn't be a problem. But again, I appreciate you guys taking out the time today to spend with me, learn some stuff. Those of you that have been here before, some of the things that I'm going to talk about are a little bit of review just because I always have new people every time. I got to put in some new, I got to make sure that they understand some things. My man. But the main part of what I want to get to towards the middle of the end part of the presentation is going to come exactly what is in your little booklet, which is talking about some ways that we can tactically improve the communication on our team. So again, thank you everybody for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get started just in the interest of time because when I come to these things, what I try to do is pump a lot of value. That's one of the things I'm talking about. But I'm going to give you a lot of information and a lot of value, so I want to make sure that we spend as much time doing that. All right, so a couple things. Like I said, Mindset 101, and we're going to talk about some strategies for maximizing communications. For more information about what we do, who I am, things about the company, we've got a booth over there until Sunday morning. There's that iPad going around. One of the things that iPad is also going to do is I'm going to send everybody on that list some extra materials and some of the materials from the presentation that you're going to get today. Stuff that you can't get unless that you're either a client or I've literally sent this stuff to you before. So make sure you put your information there. Now, as we're going through this, or whether you want it to be right now, if you text the word mindset to 4747, there's going to be a prompt that will come up to where you can immediately start gaining access to the materials that I'm talking about. The more that I talk throughout the time, you'll see the materials that I'm saying. Like I said, we're all here because we see value in the topic, not just of mindset, but of, like I said, improving communication. So again, let's get started. Thank you. So who am I? Why am I in front of you talking to a bunch of awesome college coaches and some high school coaches? So I'm a lot like you, right? I'm a wrestling coach. I've been wrestling my whole life. I've been 25 years in the sport. I wrestled all the way through Division I in college. I graduated and, now over the last 15 years, I've been coaching. Last 7 years, I've run a really successful club in Texas. I grew up in New York, so don't associate me with Texas wrestling. I'm just kidding. I grew up in New York, so when I moved to Texas, one of the first things that I wanted to do was start a wrestling club and grow wrestling in a state that I think's got a really great group of athletes.
What was that texting thing I did?
So you text the word mindset to 4747. 4747. You just go to your text messages, put 4747, and then the word mindset. Does that make sense? All right. So again, a lot like you, and I'm a current competitor, so I compete professionally in jiu-jitsu. One of the reasons I did that, one was because I wanted to stay active and stay relevant for myself. It was a personal goal. The other thing is that I coach a lot of professional fighters, and in order to gain clout in some of the rooms that I'm in that have 20, 30 UFC fighters, it's a lot easier for me to grapple with them, not just wrestle. Right? It doesn't matter if you were a Division I wrestler. They want to see that you can do the stuff that they can do, right? And they want to see that, like, it's kind of like walking into a wrestling room, right? You go roll, you give one of the best guys a good roll, they immediately have respect for you, they want to listen to what you have to say. Well, that was the approach that I took when I started growing the martial arts part of our program. So I made my pro grappling debut a couple months ago. It was in front of like 2,000 people. Me and another guy on a stage choking each other out for fun and money. And so, long story short, I beat the daylights out of the guy, about 12-0. Unfortunately, it's submission only, so it's a draw. So that's a challenge that I liked. Wrestlers do really well in point fighting, right? We could score a lot of points. I did everything really well in jiu-jitsu. I choked him twice to the point where he was gurgling and couldn't get it done. But it's a challenge for me, and it's something, like I said, that I enjoy. And one of the reasons why it's important, again, that I mentioned to athletes that we work with, that I compete, is that I know what you're feeling. Not 20 years ago, I know what you're feeling right now. Because all the feelings that they got were the same feelings that I got. The difference is that I have hyper coping mechanisms from the training and the coaching that I've done over the last handful of years. So, like we talked about earlier, I was in the FBI for 7 years. It was my dream job. That's what I always wanted to do my entire life. And it's really cool stuff. I worked in hostage negotiation. I worked in forensic accounting. I did surveillance for 3 years when I was in Washington, D.C. Stuff you saw in the movies. Been there, done that. Really cool, really rewarding. I learned a lot. I think it was something that not just shaped my resume, but shaped really who I am as a person. High pressure is one of the things that, I try to remind people that when I'm relating, when it comes to mindset or the pressure that we feel in wrestling, I was on the other phone with somebody that could have a gun in their mouth or a bomb strapped to their chest. You want to be worried about whether or not you get 2 points scored on you, because you make a mistake. I made a mistake, somebody died, right? I'm sorry, if I were to make a mistake, somebody would die. So putting those sort of things into perspective, again, helps me kind of relate. So in 2014, little known fact, I was a client of Wrestling Mindset first. So I hired them for my club team. I had 13 kids that made the state finals that year. 4 of them won, 9 of them should have. And the 5 that didn't win literally just didn't show up. They knew exactly what they needed to do. With the skills that I have, I know how to get inside somebody's head. When I couldn't do it, I'm like, I said all the right things, something's missing. The example that I like to use a lot is like, they knew this, they were taught this is what showed up. And I'm like, I don't get where their disparity is. So that's where I started seeking out, what are some resources that's going to bridge the gap that we can work with not just my kids, but this generation mentally. That's what led me to Wrestling Mindset. Had tremendous success with my team that led me to start coaching for Wrestling Mindset. Right. So in 2016, I left the FBI for Wrestling Mindset full time. That was a huge leap of faith. I have a 7-year-old. That was I gave up a lot for that career. I invested a lot in that career, and I risked a lot to leave it. But the 2 happiest days of my life was, 2 of the 3, was the day I walked in and then the day I walked out, when I realized that I could have a career in wrestling, helping wrestlers and now multiple different sports, athletes, and teams across the country. So now, I'm the mindset coach to a lot of top wrestlers, wrestlers and fighters, not just across the country, but overseas as well. One of my guys is top 10 light heavyweight in the world. He's in Switzerland right now. He used to train down here in South Florida. But it's been a fun journey for me. But like I said, I think a lot of the experiences that I've had make me very personally a unique asset, not just to the company, but to your teams. So why are we here and what should we expect, right? So why are you here? Like, what's your why? Are you here like collecting, continuing education? Are you trying to better yourself as a coach? You want to win a national title? What is it? What's the reason and your purpose for this weekend? So, are you investing in yourself and your team? Is this a leadership culture development? Are you learning cutting edge strategies from different people in different areas? Okay. Well, why am I here? Right. So why you're here now. Why am I here? Right. So like I said, I'm here to add content and value. Mindset training strategies and systems, examples of how to teach and maximize, right? So content. I want to throw a lot of content at you. This year, we're talking about improving communication on your team, going to give the value, right? Last year, it was teaching wrestlers how to pull the trigger. If you sign up for the little bonus materials that I talked about, that's one of the things that you're going to get. You're not going to see that today. But it was essentially the 3 areas why kids don't pull the trigger and simple solutions on how we can do that. I'm here to be a resource, help you solve problems that take up the most of your time, right? No matter whether you're a head coach or an assistant coach, right? Being in a managerial role, whether we're coaching wrestling or at McDonald's, the most of our time gets spent on personnel, right? Not on actually coaching, recruiting, training. And if it's not most of our time, it pulls us away. And that's what wins us national titles and gets our kids to the podium, right? So I'm here to help you, not just today, but going forward, give you guys the tools that's going to help you focus on the right things and help you get your kids where you need to be, not worrying about all the stuff that doesn't get them to the podium, doesn't help them reach their potential, doesn't help you make them into better men and women. So optimal focus, right? We're focusing on These things, not personnel problems. So what is the problem that Wrestling Mindset is solving? I didn't test the audio, so I hope this works.
One of the more fascinating things about any form of high-stress, high-level competition is there's no real guidelines of how to prepare your mind. You know, I mean, everybody teaches you how to wrestle. Everybody teaches you how to kickbox. There's all these martial arts schools that teach you technique. There's very few real, like, rock-solid programs of how to manage your mind.
Absolutely. Last thing, because you're right, there aren't enough people that talk about it. And then, you know, in wrestling, there's actually this company that's being highly successful called Wrestling Mindset, and they have a training program for athletes' minds because you're right, there's nothing out there.
Is there a website for this?
Yeah, it's wrestlingmindset.com.
No kidding. That's great.
And they're starting
that'll apply to everything.
Well, they're starting to expand into different disciplines. But you're right. I think there's these general principles of sports psych which can kind of go into any domain, right? And you're 100% correct that every single individual is different, right? And one of the
So that was 2 years ago. We didn't pay him to do that. That was just something that came natural and that got sent to my text message at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I think about 300 emails followed. Not necessarily to wrestling as much as it was from the martial arts community. That spurred a whole different focus for me to where now we work with over 30 fighters in the UFC and Bellator. One of the places that I'm embedded most is here in South Florida at Hard Knocks 365. Some of us old school people that love wrestling. Greg Jones is kind of like my right-hand man for that 3-time national champ from West Virginia. He's the grappling coach at arguably one of, if not the best, MMA gym in the country here in Pompano Beach, about 20 minutes away. So if any of you saw me at the hotel and I was in spandex and an Adidas wrestling shirt, is because I was over there training first before I got here, right? So like I said, it's in part for me, but in part like I remind those guys like I'm just like you. So same thing here. I'm just like you. I understand I understand being in the seat that you're in here, the seat that you are when you're coaching in the corner, and the seat that you are when you're running practice. So what is wrestling mindset training for teams? So what you see right here is the Central Michigan room. Ben Bennett in the back. So that's our coach Jake Hunter, who's our general manager, and he is on a live video Skype that they would meet with about 12 times throughout the season. And again, I'm going to explain the guts of really what mindset training is for the many of you that don't know. But that's essentially what it looks like. It's a live video Skype, and it's a combination of, like I said, mentorship and then wrestling-specific mindset training curriculum. Okay? I need a volunteer. Before I ask for a volunteer, how many of you were here in my presentation last year? Perfect. So everybody hasn't seen this. Can I grab a volunteer who's got really good balance? Wynn's got good balance. Come on, Wynn. You can get rid of that backpack, though. I like Wynn. He's my friend. Okay, so Wynn, I want you to, we're going to illustrate really like what mindset training means in a nutshell, or what the value is, mainly when it comes to focusing on the right thing. So Wynn's going to try to balance this, but he's only going to look at the bottom of this, I don't know what the heck this thing is, but this makeshift broomstick. Okay, he's going to try to balance it. If it moves, he's going to move, but he's only going to focus on the bottom. Now, Wynn's a pretty good athlete, right? But it's obviously having trouble doing that. Now, only thing I want you to do right now is change from where you're focusing. From the bottom, focus on the tippy top. So before you let it go, make sure that you feel ready to balance. Getting it stronger, getting it faster, getting it better at balancing. The only thing he did was shift his focus. Nice job. Give Wynn a hand. So I use that a lot, and I was glad that a lot of you weren't here because I didn't want to repeat it. Wynn's probably seen that about 4 times. We just did a camp together in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which, by the way, any high school coaches in here? It's a great camp to go to. We can talk about that later. It was a great. It's a great camp to go to. But what does that illustrate? The importance of focusing on the right things. If we can focus on the right things, it's way easier to be successful. When we focus on the wrong things, it's way harder to be successful. That doesn't mean that you can't be successful. That doesn't mean that you're guaranteed success. Just way easier or way harder. We just need to know how to do that. Okay? So, tactical thinking, right? I like to call this weaponizing your mind, right? You weaponize your cardio, you weaponize your technique, you weaponize your strength and conditioning, but no one really takes the time to train and weaponize the most important part of their entire body. You know, I didn't ask you what percentage of wrestling is mental. I think wrestling coaches at this point understand it's a very mental sport. The problem is that we're looking at, 75, 80, 90% mental. We spend 0% of our time training it, right? And that's the gap that we've filled over the last few years. So when I talk, becoming strategic and purposeful in how you think. So the way that you think influences the way that you feel. The way that you feel influences the way that you act. The way that you act influences the way that you perform. Your performance dictates your outcome. Everybody wants different outcomes, right? But they're focusing on the wrong things. You have to focus way back onto changing the way that you think first. That'll change how you feel, which will change how you perform. You guys following me? Right? Especially those of us that have a higher level of emotional intelligence, right? You understand that if you think a certain way about something, you'll feel a certain way about something, you'll act a certain way. Change the way you think about that, you'll change the outcome, right? So if this is the way that if this is the beginning and the end, right? If I'm trying to focus on the outcome of a situation, I'm never going to be able to see it. I can't see it. My peripheral vision doesn't go that far, right? But when I focus on the right things and what's right in front of me, it's a lot easier to tackle those sort of things, okay? So performance-driven instead of outcome-driven. Ultimately, our goal is the exact same as yours, maximization of performance of athletes and teams. When each individual on your lineup can crush what they're doing in the classroom, in wrestling, in school, in life, right? Ultimately, that'll show up in the wrestling match. The wrestling matches. Combine that together, you do some special things as a team. Right? So what are we not? You're not motivational speakers. You're not counseling and therapy. Right? While sports psychology is a big component of what we do, we're not sports psychologists. So I had somebody come to me and talked about how they went to one of the other sports psych type presentations when they were here this weekend, and they're like, yeah, they talked a bunch about depression and mental health. I was like, that's right, that's sports psych. Right? Sports psych is mental health focused. We're performance focused. We're not focused on winning or outcomes, right? But we're focused on performance. We're proactive versus reactive. So if everybody can see this here, this is not only a very wordy document. I wanted to make sure that you understood everything that was on there. It gives you essentially the reasons, the differences between wrestling mindset and sports psych. Right? Well, we already have a sports psychology department in our school. Well, so does Michigan State, so does Rutgers and Iowa State, so do a lot of schools. Right? They have a very distinguished sports psychology program. So does the Olympic teams that we work with. Right? The difference is it's wrestling-specific mindset training, outlined again by some of the very clear differences you see here. I'm going to talk about the track record and some of these other things, but I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to talk about, very briefly, some of my favorite success stories and progress over the last couple years. Some of you have seen me for 3 years. I looked at my Facebook, and the TBT was 3 years ago from this event, which was 3 weeks after I left my job, right? I remember 3 years ago trying to convince everybody why wrestling mindset was the right thing, right? And then the next year it was less convincing, and it was more so adding a little bit of value, but talking about the importance of mindset. I don't have to convince anybody anything anymore. Right? And I'll explain part of that, part of why that is. And that's not me being cocky. It's every year we as a society and as a wrestling community just understand that it's a lot more here in a much different way than it ever was in previous years, period. Whether we've been competing as athletes, as coaches, right, or as parents. So, this past year, we worked with over 3,500 athletes in 7 different sports. That's one of the cool things about this year is we moved sports-specific into 7 different sports to include, like I said, I had mentioned MMA, gymnastics, basketball, football, baseball, et cetera, all over the country. 6 national champions in various different divisions. 40-plus college All-Americans, a U23 World Team member. You see here, that's one of my personal clients for the last 3 years, Jason Luchow from Selma, California. He has never made the finals of Fargo this past year. Not only did he beat up on Keegan O'Toole, he had a great performance in the finals. So he beat the #1 kid in the country and then gets the outstanding wrestler at the tournament. Something that he's never done before. And I don't take any credit for that. Jace has been through, has had a lot of really special people in his life, and the moral of the story is that when a kid can realize how to get the most out of himself, it shows up when he needs it, right? So for him, he's a senior. He's graduating. He's going to Fresno State next year, right? And he didn't have to come to Fargo, but just really, he finished third in the state tournament, lost by a point to the number one kid in the country, and who also happened to be a wrestling mindset client, by the way. So two wrestling mindset clients wrestled each other in the finals of in the semifinals of the state tournament. He wanted to finish his legacy in high school the way that he wanted to, and he did. All right. Jay, you want to stand up? So Jay and Coach Brian over at JWU, they were clients this past year. They finished. You stand up for a sec. So Jay was a two-time national champion, correct? So this past year, you guys did the program. We worked with one of our other coaches, Coach Paul. Can you just share in just a few words, just kind of what the benefit the program gave to you, even competing at a high level like you were? How did the program help you and your team?
So it definitely took, you people talk about it all the time, like, oh yeah, I write down my goals, but the way the workshop set up for us, it was writing down your goals, and then are you doing all the things to achieve those goals? So you write down the goals, and then you're checking off the boxes. Are you doing this right? Oh yes, I am. And then so it all comes full circle when you really start to believe in yourself. And then for me, the most important thing was the whole UNAF preparation. So he had the mindset of Paul had us write down what we did for our matches, how to calm your mind, stay at ease. So for me, that took me personally, my mindset for the next level.
For sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. Some of the things that, like, again, maybe you're not super familiar with what we're talking about when we say workshops. Like I said, it's the interactive Skype. The curriculum is broken down into 60 different wrestling-specific mindset training worksheets into topics like confidence, relaxing under pressure, self-knowledge, goal setting, motivation, aggressiveness, present moment, etc. All right, so that's what he's referring to. So goal setting being one part, but really what it is, like I said, it's tactical and purposeful thinking, like being purposeful with the way that you think before you wrestle, during your matches, right? So in the U23 wrestle-off at Fargo, longtime client of mine, Brady Kuntz, is over at Ohio State. He was really nice to say something unexpected about how he benefited from the training. And one of the things that he was saying is, like, it was so important for him and his twin brother, Dylan, to really figure out, like, what were the thoughts and the feelings that he needed to be thinking and doing before and during his matches, being more purposeful in those sort of things. Because if you wanted consistent performances, you needed consistent thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, right? So again, there's different levels as to, like, where and how this benefits, and I'll talk about that as we run through. But just wanted to share an example of one of the people that are in this room that I think benefited from training. There's a couple of other clients that are in here. I'm not going to call on everybody, but there's some particular places within the presentation that I'll ask them to say a few words, just so you guys can understand and humanize it for yourself too. So 5 team trophies this past year. So St. Cloud State's been clients for like 5 or 6 years. They won another Division II national title. I think that's like 4 out of the last 6 years. 6 teams reached top 25. And again, I have like some strategic places that I wanted to ask some people some questions. But for those of you that did the program last year, can you just raise your hand real quick? So Ohio U, JWU, Michigan State, Central Michigan in the back, and then you guys over at William Penn. Most of you guys were my clients, so I'm really glad that you guys got a chance to be here and share as we continue to learn more. But we really get close to a lot of these teams, but particularly the teams that are in like Michigan and Ohio. I end up being there a lot. So I'm not saying that every one of your mindset coaches that you end up being with, you get to be there in person, but I know for me, like, I spent a lot of time at Michigan State. Central Michigan's not even my client, but I spend time when I happen to be there to drop by. So the things that our coaches do to go out of our way to make sure that, you guys are not just, you're not just people that we talk to 8 times throughout the year, 12 times throughout the year. We're another coach in your corner. And I'm going to breeze through high school. 5 team state titles, 4 teams ranked top 25, 56 state champions, 5 Fargo champions, including 2 kids that never even placed in the tournament before from the same team from Dundee, Michigan. who were the first team. There's a small fact. They're the first team I ever worked with in Michigan. They had two kids this past year win Fargo that never even played before. Steve Costanzo from St. Cloud State. It was really humbling to hear him say things like, he thought wrestling mindset was a difference maker in his team winning a national title. Mitch Hancock over at Detroit Catholic Central. They've won 3 straight Michigan State titles. They actually won a team title 52-1 in the finals in the state tournament 2 years ago. What you guys don't realize that 4 of those matches came down to 1 point or overtime. Right, so it could have easily gone another way if those kids cracked under that pressure. But one of the things that I liked what Mitch had to say, and I've got a lot of respect for Mitch as a human being and as a coach, and he says, we did a fantastic job of building confidence and communicated the point that wrestling is fun, and we're grateful for the opportunity to compete. We felt like we had another coach in our corner. I mean, you got to coach for your strength, you got to coach for your technique, you got to coach for your nutrition, but you don't have a coach for something that makes up 90% of your sport. It's kind of crazy. So, St. Cloud is not my team. Catholic Central and pretty much everybody here, even though I'm not your mindset coach, I feel like I'm your honorary mindset coach at Central. All right, why is mindset training important? Like I said, I'm breezing through this so we can spend most of our time on content. Talking versus doing, teach how they learn, right? So the reason why you say the right things to your kids, how many of you give your kids the advice that they need and they don't execute on that advice? How many of you guys feel like that? Whether it's mentally or technique. Let's try that again. How many of you struggle with that? Raise your hand high. We're all there, right? Here's the thing. Science works against you, right? They only retain 5% of what they hear. 30%, if you look at this learning period, right, you're not going to be able to really see it very well. They retain 5% of what they hear, about 30% of what they see or are demonstrated, right? But 75% of what they do. So think of technique, right? We don't listen to technique. We don't watch technique. We drill. So mindset training is the same way, right? We do thousands of reps of high crotches and doubles and singles, but how many mental reps do we do? Not a lot. I like this. I've realized over the last few years, working with varying different levels, but obviously a lot of high-level clients, there's 3 different types of clients that come to us. The average team that's looking to kind of jump levels, the above average team that's looking to close the gap, and the people at the top of the food chain that want to sit there, that want to stay there, right? So why would Mitch work with us 3 years in a row when he's a really good coach and knows what he's doing? Well, we have a system to help his kids make sure that they show up and perform at their best. They want to stay state champions and go for 4 in a row. Last year, I don't know if you guys read it, they had 8 kids in the state finals. 2 of them wrestled each other. So of the 7 kids that were in the state finals, all 7 of them won. I don't take any credit for that, right? But like you guys know that we all play a small role in making sure that those kids and their talent shows up, right? The main thing that mindset training will give you, different than anything else, like I said too, is tools. You take home tools. We teach you something and we give you instructions that you can practically take it and use it at practice that day when you talk to your girlfriend or when you guys as coaches listening are using it talking to your wife. Just some basic things that I think a lot of wrestlers struggle with that we give specific ways on how to help battle through the worksheets. Not pulling the trigger, no killer instinct, giving good opponents too much respect, wrestling cautious and hesitant, afraid to lose, practice room wrestlers, chokes in big matches. Right? We've all had kids lose because of those reasons. I've lost because of those reasons, so have you, right? I'm not going to go into each of these like I would normally do, but if you notice, right, one or two of these things causes like 2 or 3 of the other. Right? If I give people too much respect, I'm going to wrestle cautious and hesitant because I'm afraid to make mistakes, so I don't pull the trigger. If we don't change the way that we think about certain situations, like, well, this kid's the number 1 seed. I don't think I could beat him. I'm not even seeded. Well, if you think that you can't beat the kid because he's seeded higher than you, then you feel like you've got no chance, so you're not going to wrestle like you have any chance. Right? Just giving you an example. Right? So we're never going to fix that outcome. That kid's not going to wake up one day and stop caring about seedings if that's his issue. Right? Everybody's different. Right? For some kids, so for like Cam Amin, 3-time state champ from Catholic Central, one of the things that he said that mindset training helped him was as a big name coming in his senior year, he was just able to relax. He was just focused on wrestling being fun and something that he enjoyed, right? Versus the pressure of being one of the 500 and Mean Brothers, or getting a third state title, or the wherever he was going to go wrestle in college, right? So like I said, everyone's at a different level that comes to the program. We all benefit from it in different ways. This is one of the things that you hear us talk about all the time. If you see, I didn't put a sexy tagline to my talk today, right? It wasn't just going to be about predator mindset. I'm always going to talk a few minutes about it. Some of you that have heard it, you really get it. For those of you that this is the first time, you're probably like, oh, this is a great concept, right? Well, let's get on the phone. I'll be happy to talk to you more about it. I want to make sure that the people that are coming every single year, I want to give them new stuff. Right? There's some people that have been here 2-3 years in a row. I want to make sure that they're getting new stuff. This is the crux of our program. This is what we're famous for, that everybody asks us to talk about specifically. Eyes in the front like to hunt. Eyes in the side like to hide. Predator mindset. Predators are genetically designed to kill or chill. There's no in between, right? Versus prey animals, their eyes are in the side so they can protect themselves from being eaten. Pretty simple. So you can see in a great illustration, right? Wolf, ready to kill. It's genetically designed to focus on what his task is at hand, right? This is a great example, and you guys all have a card for that reason, of a reminder of how important it is to focus on ourselves and have that tunnel vision. So if you guys want to take a picture of that. I'm gonna hammer this concept down in the back of your head, right? Change the way you think is the way you're going to change the way that you perform, right? You can't skip any of these processes. You want to change outcomes, wins or losses, right? It all comes down to whether or not are the things that we're thinking are productive, unproductive, you're getting us closer or farther from our goals, or what we call predator prey thinking. All right, so again, like I said, I'm not spending a lot of time on some of the things that I've talked about a lot, but for some of you who've never heard this before, this is really cool, I don't want to say revolutionary, but really helpful way, not just to think about wrestling, but everything in your life, okay? So, like it talks about here, predator mindset, attack style wrestling, prey mindset, defensive wrestling. Keep scoring points to dominate versus wrestling to keep it close. Focused on the next move versus focus on rankings and opponents. Focused only on their objective and their goals, compares himself to others. Imposes his will, fears making mistakes, etc., 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 right? So really what the predator mindset comes down to, and again, this has helped me so much in life. I feel like I was part of the generation, and maybe many of you too, where wrestling really blessed me with wrestling taught us a lot more casually, right? That's why we're we're tougher than this generation, is that we were able to absorb the lessons that wrestling taught us, right? The reason this generation doesn't, there's many different reasons, but ultimately they lack the coping mechanisms to be able to absorb the lessons, right? And when adversity hits, it kind of kicks them in the mouth versus we kind of bit down on our mouthpiece and drove forward, right? So teaching them these coping skills is what's going to allow us, and helping them train the way that they think allows them to push through. But predator mindset is not about lions, tigers, and bears, right? Predator mindset is about narrow, simple vision. A predator animal has a very simple thought process. I'm killing or I'm chilling, right? I'm focused on what's directly in front of me, right? I'm not worried about what's around me, okay? That focus comes to myself, right? If it has to do with me, if it doesn't, I move it to the side, right? What can I control? Effort, attitude, and intensity, right? And in wrestling, and this is something that I think you guys can really reiterate to your guys and your girls, right? So what can you control? Hey, go out there, focus on you. Well, what does that mean? A kid hears that. They get what you're trying to say, but what does that actually mean? It means your focus is not on winning or losing. It's on nothing else but breaking guys, improving your position, scoring points. Those are tangible things. Effort, attitude, and aggressiveness, breaking guys, improving position, scoring points. Any questions so far? Trying to keep track of my time. What time we got, Bo? 14, right? Perfect. All right, so today, right, the thing that I wanted to really drive home, I need to lay the foundation of what it is that I'm talking about and the things that we're doing every time that I talk to you guys, right? If I don't talk about some of the foundational layers of mindset when I speak to new people. That's as if I'm trying to teach a new wrestler how to hit a high crotch before I taught how to for them to be in their stance. So I appreciate some of your guys' patience and understanding. So culture and communication, right? Culture and communication, they feed off each other and they go hand in hand, right? That's some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. Culture elevates or diminishes talent or potential, right? It will make or break your team, right? You can have talented wrestlers, bad culture implodes, right? You can have less talented wrestlers, great culture elevates their talent. We've all been there, right? So communication, a vital part of the creation and sustainment of culture. So, Win, is that Drew? Couldn't tell. I think so. So, I really enjoyed working with Michigan State this last year for many reasons. One, coaches were bought in, kids were really hungry for change. Obviously, it's a program that has really made a 180 from what they were in the past. And a lot of that has to do with the culture that they've created in the room. But to have a group of guys that are not just bought into what I've got to say, but bought into the idea that hey, we're all in this together. We're all in this to try to make change. There are people that are willing to do the little things and go above and beyond to, how do I say this? Willing to do the little things and go above and beyond to get the results that they're looking for. So what do I mean? I'm at camp with some of Wynn's wrestlers, and I'm sitting there having dinner with Cam Caffey, one of their guys who qualified for the NCAA tournament that made a world team, right? Yep. So, and he's sitting there, he's asking me questions about how to be a better leader. He's asking me questions about what are the things that I can do more? What are some things that I can do different, right? So one of the things that I'm going to talk to you about is that in order for us to make change, it's going to come from the inside out, not from the top down. So when your kids are the ones that are fighting for you, that are going to be the ones trying to push for changes and make things different, that's when we're going to shift culture in the right way. Or we got a bad culture, we want to improve it. We got a great culture, we want to improve it. Change is going to come from the inside out, right? Not necessarily from the top down. And that's was one of the reasons why I think I chose a picture of Roger and one of the state wrestlers that there was a very clear shift in culture over the last year, 2 years, and that showed in results. And I'm really excited to see what they're going to do this next year. Cross fingers, right? As coaches, we all stay healthy. Great things can happen. Okay. So creating the right culture, right? When it comes to communication, like I said, ultimately your culture is going to dictate. So starts with your foundational purpose. Like I said, the first thing when we walked in, why are you here? So why do you coach, right? Somebody tell me, why do they coach? What's their purpose for coaching? Yeah, 100%. You know what's funny? It almost sounds cliche when you say it, but 50 of us will say the same thing. Because we feel like wrestling built us who we are, and it's one of the few sports where most of us have played other sports. We feel like this almost obligation to want to give back, like it was a dad that we never had, right? Or it was a second dad. Why else? Somebody else. Why do you coach? Watch others grow, watch yourself grow. When your reasons are bigger than yourself, right? That's one of the easiest ways that we can make sure that we are not necessarily going to be successful. We start going in that trajectory and that direction. When we have things that are grounded in results based, like if our self-worth or our purpose is determined by outcomes, right? If our team does bad in a duel, then we feel like we're we've lost self-worth. So if we're defining ourselves by wins or losses or by how much money we make, right? If our purpose in anything has something to do that's not an absolute truth, something bigger than yourself, you immediately failed, right? So change will come from the inside out, but it starts from the top down, right? So one of the things when I talk about gratitude is that, when it comes to gratitude, when I did a podcast with Kale's brother Kyler about gratitude and faith in wrestling, I was like, how do you create a culture with more gratitude? He's like, start by showing more gratitude. You show more gratitude. You thank them for a hard practice. You thank them for working hard, right? So again, it starts from the top down, but ultimately change comes from the inside out. Athlete-driven accountability and change, okay? Anybody watch college football? So Texas beat up on Georgia, and that was like really unexpected. Like, beat them up pretty good. And they pulled the UT coach over at the end of the game, and they were like, man, like, where does this come from? Like, how did you guys do this? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, Georgia was the team that beat Alabama this year, right? Georgia beat Alabama? They beat Clemson? No. Georgia during the season beat Alabama. Alabama had one loss, right? Maybe I'm crazy. Point being, Georgia was supposed to smoke UT, and they did it. Completely other side around. The UT coach was like, 100% has to do with my players. Like, and he was talking about how he says, the change from 4 years ago when we were losing to today is that today we have an athlete-driven culture. Our team is driven by our guys, not by me. I'm a supplement, right? Again, that sounds great, but, again, like, how do we get there? Ultimately, if we could focus on creating, like it says here, we focus on creating leaders will make a little more leaders. Eventually, you just have a team of leaders, right, in one way or another. Maybe they lead differently. Some lead by example. Some lead by the things that they do in class. Some lead by being vocal, right? But leaders make more leaders, right? So if we focus on building leaders, not building championship teams, right, the championships follow. Gratitude driven, right? So like I talked to you about the podcast with Kyler. If you haven't heard me talk about it like 100 times already and you haven't listened to it, please listen to that podcast. Not because it helps me by any means, but like it was really spending a lot of time in Utah with Kale, Kyler, not Cody, but Cole and like their parents. I learned a lot about like what made them as good as they were. And it was very little to do with wrestling, right? Anybody can be good at a cradle, right? It's anybody can go to a lot of the things that they were good at. It had a lot less to do with wrestling and a lot less to do what was going here. And it had a lot to do with gratitude. Listen to that podcast. But gratitude driven means like we're getting our kids focused on like being thankful for the opportunities versus, right, being preoccupied with outcomes, right? They're chasing performances. They're coming off of the mat. A great example was Josh Edmonds from Detroit Catholic Central. Beats his kid up in the state finals, comes off. I was like, good job, man. Proud of you. Like, how do you feel like you did? He's like, should have scored more points, coach. Just won a state title. Like second or third state title. Was pissed because he didn't score enough points, right? Didn't wrestle poorly. But when you're thankful for opportunities, you're more relaxed, you're happy, you enjoy it, you work harder, right? Again, like, where's your focus? Are you here, caught up in all these things you can't control, or are you right here? All right, so how do we promote open communication, right? How do we promote open communication? From coaches to athletes, from coaches within coaches, right? From athletes to athletes, right? Most often the productive relationships that we have productive forms of communication, right? So again, we want better relationships. Let's continue to make sure that we're focused on having more continued productive communication. What time we got? 22? Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. So why do we need to promote open communication, right? If we want our kids to do their absolute best, we need to know how to get that out of them. So I'm going to show you an example as to what it is that's an example of what we do to help teams get there, right? A tangible tool that will allow your guys to tell you how they want to give and receive feedback, right? Just in the interest of time, because I could send this to you guys. Some other things that it's going to do, we're going to redefine criticism. Criticism isn't going to be awfulized anymore. Criticism is going to be seen as an opportunity to grow. It's going to be a challenge that we can overcome, not an obstacle. Okay? Minimizes ego. So when you say something to somebody or they say something to you, right, you don't get taken aback by it, right? So how do we do this? How do we grow this communication, this better culture in communication? Like I said, make it more tactical and strategic. Let's be purposeful. So reworking current communication strategies and inside-out accountability. So, one of the things when I was coming up with the ideas of what I was going to talk about this weekend, I asked Win. I said, Win, what were some of the, if there was one thing that we did with your team that really helped you a lot, what would that be? And he mentioned this worksheet. I don't know if you guys can see, but essentially what it's talking about, what it's asking is, it's an evaluation from athlete to coach saying, What does my coach do that helps me mentally? What does my coach do that inadvertently hurts me mentally? How would I prefer my coach to critique me? How would I prefer my coach to treat me during a competition or during a tournament? Or, I'm sorry, before a competition or a tournament. So, for example, you're going to ask your kid, do you want me to fire you up, keep you calm and relaxed, joke around, give you sport-related technical advice, or lay off completely? How do they want to be handled right after a match? So if you guys want to take a quick picture, that's fine. If you put your name in that, or text mindset to 4747, or put your name in that iPad, I'm going to send you the actual worksheet that goes along with this. All right. But echoing what Wynn said, Matt Lindland over the Greco coach over at the OTC was talking about, it helps me get to know my athletes better and understand how to communicate with them before and after matches and in training. It helped me communicate the right message at the right time. So, in a quick synopsis, can you say an example of how it was really helpful for your team, Wynn?
Yeah, I mean, one just example that I have is we were at a tournament early in the year, and obviously we had like 15 guys there and 4 coaches, and so I got stuck with a kid, coaching a kid on the mat, not stuck with him, I shouldn't say that, but I ended up coaching a kid that I don't usually work with. He's a lighter weight, kind of more, just a younger kid, very modern, not really in my wheelhouse. I'm more of a grinder. And I went up to him and I just kind of told him a little joke because we had done this worksheet and he said that he wanted to be relaxed and laugh a little bit before his match. So I told him like just some really corny joke, and he went out on the mat and beat one of the kids that I think 2 years ago was ranked in the top 10 in the country. It's kind of fallen off a little bit, but he went out there and beat him. A kid that I never thought that he would even make it through a match with. And then I was on his mat for every match the rest of the season, just because we created that rapport in that moment because of that worksheet.
So it says there was a team in Louisiana and Utah that what they did was they put this in a Google form and then they automated it and they put it in a spreadsheet. So you have as a coach the ability to, no matter who you're coaching against, John Smith is going? Okay, hold on. All right, boom. So John Smith he hates it when coach does this, he likes it when coach does that, and he wants direct feedback before his match. He wants me to fire him up. You know exactly how each kid wants to be coached. Now again, I was the FBI crisis negotiator guy. Like, I have a psychology background. One of the best kids that I ever coached that wrestles at NC State now, I was with him for 2 years. We did this. I read him completely wrong. Right? Before his matches, I'd get in his face, because that's his personality. I'd get in his face, like I'd fire him up. I'd remind him the technique that he needs to do. You know what he wrote that he wanted me to do? Lay off completely. Like, dude, we travel all around the country together for 2 years. You don't tell me to shut up and just like get out of here? It's like, well, it didn't bother me, but it's not what I wanted. How can I expect to get the most out of a kid when I don't even know the details of how he actually wants to be coached? I can assume, you know what else is crazy? As a hostage negotiator, so like before I left, I was a researcher for the behavioral analysis unit. One of the things that we were doing was creating an objective evaluation on how to evaluate how a negotiations is going. There is no objective evaluation. It's based on 25 years of detective experience that I think we should call SWAT now, because I don't think we can get any farther. It doesn't look like we're making progress. There's no objective evaluation of where we should negotiate or whether we should call somebody in, right? My point is that when we make it tactical and purposeful, then we can say that we're being able to coach their kids to their peakest potential. Does that make sense? So that's the difference between like what you think mindset training is and what mindset training really is, right? Strategic and purposeful, right? The other thing that we talked about for an actionable tool that you guys can use is an accountability partner. Again, you want change to come from the inside out. Well, your guys and girls need to hold each other accountable, right? So not a lot of details that I'm going to get into about that, but the bottom line is whatever systems that you want to implement, we have our own. Your kids have to be your brother or sister's keeper. They have to be in charge of themselves. So like I've noticed when I speak at other conventions, they have an outfield captain, they have an infield captain, or they got a lightweight captain, they got a heavyweight captain, or some sort of micro leadership bigger than that is in addition to the macro level of just the captain of the whole team. Does that make sense? Break down your leadership so that the same way you would want 10 coaches to a small coach to athlete ratio, leadership ratio needs to be the same way. right? So as we finish up, just, I want you guys to, I'm here for another day and a half, right? I want to pump a lot of information, right? I wish I had 2 hours to talk to you. I want to pump a lot of information to you with the intention that, like, I'm going to see you at my booth, or you're going to text me, or we're going to talk more about this, right? Because ultimately, I gave you a lot of nuggets for you to start, like, getting the ball rolling with how to create a better culture, how to improve your communication, some basic strategies that we use. I'm literally going to send you the worksheet that we use with our teams to help you foster that communication better. Again, just think of how valuable it is when you have a bunch of kids at a tournament to a few coaches and you know exactly what that kid wants to hear. You know what I noticed? The more that I travel and be around really top teams, that's something that, like, a lot of the top teams in the country and top coaches in the country, that they do in their own way, right? So, like, when I was over at Catholic Central, Mitch has every guy fill out this little sheet for some of the things that they, some of the ways that they want to be coached in the corner. Again, different than ours, a little less systematic. One of the things that I liked, what's one word that you want us to hear and that you want us to echo in the corner? There's one word you need to hear. Little details make a big impact, all right? So there's some new program features for our team programs that include a lot of one-on-one training. Everyone that's going to be on the program this next year, we're implementing what we're going to call, like, team learning activities, right? It's something where, in addition to the workshops and the mentorships, we're doing some strategic, like, for lack of a better word, activities in each lesson to really drive the point home, like most good teachers would. The trend is most teams are starting in August and September, not November or October and December, right? So we're doing a lot more preseason work. A lot of success in other sports. If you coach other sports or you're tight with people that coach other sports, right? These are just some of the types of things that we've been involved with in the last year, or the types of groups we've been involved with in the last year. Content, lots of podcasts, like 5 to 7 minute versions of things that you can do, little nuggets that you can gain from your gain more information. And then again, for more content, I'm going to send you a lot of stuff, a lot of bonus material, either texting or from that iPad. I'm going to contact you with that information. Again, my goal in 50 minutes was to pump a lot of info and kind of make you start having light bulbs come off, right? My goal over the next day or so is you come find me and not wait till I'm on the other side of the globe for us to start talking about how that looks to help your team. Make sense? I want to take a second to say two things. One, for those of you who have probably seen this on a lot of, like, of our Instagram or Facebook posts, right? They're the 4 things that we really stand for. It's our 4 principles we make all our teams say. That's something that, whether you say it or implement something similar, right? Have a purpose-driven affirmations that you have your guys say every day that they're going to ground themselves in. Number 1. Number 2, I again want to thank all of you for being here, right? There's choices of things that you can do that also include pool, alcohol, and whoever else is speaking, right? And you chose to spend 40 minutes, 50 minutes with me. So thank you. I appreciate that. Second, thank you to everybody, all the clients of mine that came in to support what I'm doing, share your stories. I look forward to working with you guys next year. It's been a pleasure working with all of y'all's teams, and I look forward to us working with more. One of the things that I enjoy a lot, some of you don't work with me, but we feel like we know each other, right? It's like I'm at a tournament, I have a mom come up to me and say, hey, you don't know me, and my son works with blah, blah, blah. We just want to say how happy we are that we found your program, because da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that happened about 18 times at Fargo from a bunch of random people that I don't know. So those are the sort of things that, like I said, it reminds me that, like, I left a career that less than 1% of people can get for the right reasons. So I feel like this is the reason that I'm put on this earth, is to be, to help change the sport of wrestling where I feel like it's hurting the most, giving you guys the tools that you need. And I look forward to working with a lot of you in a great season this next year. So again, thank you. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for today's podcast. I'm Gene Zanetti from Wrestling Mindset. Make sure you check out our website, wrestlingmindset.com. Get our ebook. Make sure you get that ebook. Great information, represents some of the best information that we have lessons that we've learned from some of the top wrestlers in the world, lessons that we've learned from our own experience, and the best that research can provide. Get the ebook, wrestlingmindset.com. Also, as an individual, make sure you personally sign up for the one-on-one free mindset consultation. The one-on-one free mindset consultation. Make sure you fill out the form and do that as soon as possible. The best results always come from one-on-one individual attention, whether it's strength training, whether it's technique, or whether it's mindset. One-on-one individual attention is always the best. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you join us again for our next podcast. Mindset makes the difference. Have a great day.